Welcome to the Virtual Health Conference. Next up, we have Respiri. Respiri is an e-health software as a service company supporting respiratory health management. Its world-first technology detects wheeze, a typical symptom of asthma, COPD, and respiratory disease to provide an objective measure of airway limitation. On the line, we have Marjan Mikel. Marjan has recently taken the helm of Respiri as it transitions from R&D to commercialization in 2020. He's a highly experienced managing director and board member with a career spanning Australia, Europe, and Japan. Marjan's focus has been in the healthcare industry, from pharmaceuticals to information services and technology, also to medical devices and sleep disorder solutions, so he's covered it all. I'll leave it to you now, Marjan, to take it away with your presentation.
Yeah, thanks, Laura. Well, 2020 has been an extraordinary year. The coronavirus pandemic has changed the way we operate, both socially and from business sense, and those changes are here to stay. And healthcare has been no different. People are demanding, and it's catalyzed, people demanding to get convenient, efficient, and cost-effective healthcare development and delivery. And Respiri is well positioned to take advantage of this, particularly in the area of respiratory cancer, because what we do is we provide patients for the first time the ability to be able to monitor the control of their asthma in a remote setting, because today no such services exist. So we're well and truly transitioned into the launch phase now. We changed strategy from a pure device manufacturer to an e-health SaaS plan. We've announced partnerships with a couple of health providers, Mikel and GPL, and we'll be integrating the wheeze health solution into their platforms that will allow doctors to have a better engagement with patients in the.
Sorry, Marjan, sorry to interrupt, but can you please talk a little bit closer to your microphone? It seems to be breaking up a little bit.
Right up. Sorry.
Thank you. That's all right. These things happen in the virtual conference age that we're in.
If I see another Zoom meeting, I'll kill my...
Is that better, Laura?
Yes, much better.
Okay, right. So back to the presentation. The transition has well and truly happened to the launch phase. We, as I said, have had a strategic change from a device manufacturer to an e-health SaaS play. We've announced our partnerships with two telehealth organisations, Phoenix Health and GP Now. And rest assured that telehealth is here to stay. That genie has been let out of the bottle and it's never going to be put back in there. And it provides, as I said, convenient, cost-effective and efficient ways of healthcare delivery. We've scaled now to be in a position to manufacture wheezo at a scale that allows us to commercialise. We've got CE mark and TGA approvals, that's Europe and Australia. And the FDA 510K predicate will be lodged in 3 weeks' time with an expected approval in late 2020. We've maintained our rigour around cost reduction without compromising our ability to deliver. And we've got a brand new team, a world-class team that's been able to execute in these very, very testing times. So we're still on track for our 2020 quarter 4 launch. We've managed to, in these very difficult times, I've been called a lot of things in the week that we actually went for the placement. It was in that week in March when everything sort of fell apart, but we successfully raised the $2 million in that placement. And on Friday last, the share purchase plan closed and we've had extremely strong interest from the shareholder base. So we're very comfortable with where we're going. And I guess it's an indictment on the organisation that there is a level of confidence from our existing shareholder group in the direction we're taking and the abilities of the team to be able to deliver on the plans that we will be discussing in this presentation. The company overview, as of Friday, market cap was 41 million. I should also mention that the board of directors is completely new, led by Nicholas Smedley, our executive chairman, Thomas Duthie, our non-executive director, and a strong pedigree with Cirtec Medical Limited, and was involved in the largest trade sale of a biotech company in Australia's history, with the sale of Cirtec a few years ago, and myself, of course. Now, we know that asthma is a huge market. In Australia, about 2.7 million people have asthma. Important to know that 400 people die due to asthma every year. We know that extensive use of Ventolin and other bronchodilators is now a reliable predictor of asthma exacerbations and deaths. Now, why this is important is because people today, because they can't monitor how well their asthma is being controlled, over-medicate because they think it's the right thing to do. Australia is one of the only markets in the world where Ventolin is available over the counter, so there is excessive usage of Ventolin in this country. About half the patients with asthma are poorly controlled. And 1 in 10 patients with asthma visits a hospital or an emergency ward at least once a year. And it's a commonly addressed disease state by GPs and healthcare professionals generally. So a lot of what GPs do, a lot of what specialists do, respiratory specialists and pharmacists, involve discussions and consultations around asthma. And as I said, the market's huge. In the world today, there are 340 million patients with asthma, and the number is growing. It can't be cured or even effectively prevented, but you can control the asthma by the appropriate use of an asthma management plan that's put in place by a healthcare professional. A study done in Australia just recently showed that 70% of asthma patients who believe that they're managing their asthma well are not managing their asthma well at all and putting themselves at risk. And again, part of this is the inability today of an asthma patient and their carer group to be able to monitor how well their asthma is being controlled. Accurately measuring asthma control in patients such as children and elderly remains very, very difficult because of the age of the patients. And as I said, there are no easy solutions that allow patients, parents, carers, their physicians to monitor how well their asthma is being controlled on an ongoing basis. And we know it's a problem because it costs the Australian economy almost $25 billion per annum in hospitalizations, medical interventions, lost productivity, etc., etc. So it is a major issue, and we know that the control of the asthma is not good because of these factors. Our indicative timeline of milestones, COVID-19 has thrown a bit of a spanner in the works with regards to being able to talk to some of our key stakeholders. You can appreciate that all our stakeholders have vested interests in respiratory medicine. So we're talking to specialists at this particular juncture is a very difficult thing to do because the last thing they want to do is talk to me when they've got so many other things to work through. But basically, apart from that, everything else is still online for execution and for us to be launching with laser focus in the Australian market this year. As I said, and I'll repeat this on an ongoing basis because this is where the opportunity for Respiri lies. Asthma is poorly managed by patients, particularly in the children and the aged. As I said previously, 70% of patients who are asthma sufferers and think they're being controlled are not. And they have a very little understanding of what it is that is triggering their exacerbations and when that is coming on. Using the correct diagnosis and regular use of preventers, correct medication and an asthma management plan are keys to managing one's respiratory health. Problem is that these are not routinely done and these are not routinely measured because, as I said previously, today an asthma patient does not have the capability or tools to be able to monitor their asthma effectively. And unfortunately, the first symptom of poorly controlled asthma is an exacerbation. So also providing peace of mind to the carer team around a patient, their parents, teachers, physicians. It's also very important because we know one thing and one thing for sure, and that is carer or parent intervention with a patient is proven to improve health outcomes. And Yes. As I said, the pathway to commercialization is certainly, we're well away. And we're accelerating and optimizing the launch through partnerships. As I said, a small company like Respiri can't possibly take on the world on its own and win. So it is critical that we have the right partnerships to help us with the commercialization. We have a newly appointed general manager of commercial operations with extensive experience in health, lots of successful launches, and working across quite a number of pharmaceutical companies in Australia. Our sole focus for 2020 is launching in Australia and getting it right. Once we do that, we'll have the recipe for success, and we'll be launching in Europe and the US in 2021. We are certainly well advanced in MOU discussions with a pharmaceutical company that will act as our channel partner in the pharmacy chain. And certainly very advanced in other discussions with another pharmaceutical company with very tight pedigree with respiratory physicians. And these two partnerships are critical for us to launch effectively in Australia. The beauty also is these companies are multinationals. So when it comes to looking at international marketplaces, they will be our partners in those areas as well, which means that we will have a cost-effective and rapid penetration of markets around the world. Telehealth, as I said, is a very important channel. And as I said, latest developments, we announced a couple of partnerships and are pursuing a few others because the effective delivery of healthcare, particularly at these times, is really important. And it's a growing channel, and doctors will continue to utilize these sorts of vehicles to better manage their patients. Importantly, though, the days of simply having a Zoom conference such as this one or a Skype conference are over. Doctors need to be able to effectively engage with their patients, even in a telehealth setting, because they need to be able to measure various aspects of a patient's health and be able to get feedback on how things are working in a remote setting. So it's not good enough just to have a casual chat over the phone, but rather we need to be able to provide the telehealth providers with tools that they can use with their doctors to be better able to engage with the patients. I've discussed the fact that we will be using pharmacy as a major channel for patients or with the distribution of wheezo. It stands to reason given that there are over 1 million patients that visit a pharmacy for asthma-related issues every month. We're certainly in extended discussions with Asthma Australia to partner and go directly to patients through their established channels and to get their endorsement of what it is that we're doing. Those discussions are still underway. As I said, we moved to the SaaS platform, which basically sees us with a monthly subscription fee of about $8 with a recommended retail price of $299, depending on markups in the channel. But certainly that's been proven in market research to hold water when it comes to the consumer. As I said, we've also moved full steam ahead to get the second 2.0 app developed. We've got a world-class team working on this, an experienced chief clinical officer who's been with us for a while, and she's responsible for the algorithm development and clinical content, and a CTO with Silicon Valley pedigree leading the app build, data management infrastructure, and Respiri competency development to support the structure of a SaaS strategy. We've seamlessly transitioned to our new developers without any problems whatsoever, and they're working hard as I speak to get the app version 2 sorted by July. Now, the new version, as some of you probably heard me say in the past, is an asthma management system. It goes beyond just measuring wheeze, but rather looks at environmental factors, pollen count, pollution, particulate. It's an event diary. It also provides alerts on whether there are high-risk days for that patient, medication usage, and basically a feedback loop for the patient to basically get an understanding of all the things that could be impacting their asthma control. And fundamentally, it's an electronic version of the asthma management plan that their doctors have pulled together for them. Now, the clouded data also allows for this information to be shared with whomever that patient wants to share that information. Doctors, parents, teachers, pharmacists, whoever. And so basically, once a patient starts to record what it is they're doing on our app, they become a Respiri customer for life. Now, we can imagine the longitudinal data that we're collecting and how useful this would be for payers and policymakers moving forward. But before we even start talking about that, we need to get patients on to the device. As I said also, the wheezo production is now at a place where we can manufacture wheezo at scale, and at a scale that's sufficient for us to be able to supply the marketplace. We are looking at supply chain management to make sure that we reduce our COGS as quickly as possible. And we've received the full batch of 500 units from the SRX Dandenong facility. And we're looking now at using those in the patient experiential program, where doctors and patients will be basically given the opportunity to incorporate wheezo and the SAS play into the way that they manage their asthma. Now, we will be collecting both hard and soft data from patients, doctors, and carers, and be using those to further understand how well wheezo fits into the way that asthma is managed. And we'll be using that for the full-blown launch in Q4 this year. The idea is to take production to SRX Malaysia, where there are obviously lower labour costs and a greater capacity than here in Australia. And we're also looking at doing some minor modifications to the design of wheezo, which does nothing to regulatory issues, but might make it a little easier to manufacture. So that's all underway. So to recap, the transition to launch phase is well and truly on. The big changes this year have been a change in strategy from a simple device manufacturer to a device and e-health SaaS play, which allows for an ongoing annuity stream and helps make a patient of Respiri for life. We understand that there is going to be a growing importance placed on telehealth, and we are pursuing a number of telehealth partners, but partners who are dedicated to making sure that the platforms they produce and provide give the doctor the opportunity to interact with their patients and engage with that patient, because that's good healthcare, that's a good health outcome. As I said, we're in a position now where we can manufacture the number of wheezos we need to go to market. We have got both approvals in Australia and Europe, and should have the FDA approval by the end of this year, which means that we have approvals across all major jurisdictions across the globe. We maintain very focused on ensuring that we're diligent with costs and spend money on what needs to be spent, and be frugal in those areas where we don't need to be spending any money. The team's committed to making sure that these plans are going to be executed, and thus far have been very successful in executing the plans despite what's been happening in the world to date. The transformation in 2020 has happened and will continue to happen. We are still very confident of a Q4 launch here in Australia, and launching that appropriately, effectively, and with laser-like precision, with the view of then taking the proven business model to Europe and later to the US. So I don't want to belabor the point, but this is where we're at as an organisation now. A lot of challenges ahead, but some great opportunities, and a bunch of patients who've been waiting a little too long for Respiri's wheezo to be made available to them, to help them with the management and monitoring of their asthma, and sharing that information with their entire carer team. So with that, I will throw over to any questions that may be available.
Thank you, Marjan, for that. We have a couple of questions for you. We have someone wondering what your background is and your most recent venture before joining the company, and how it helps with this journey. I know that you're relatively new to the role of CEO at Respiri, so it'd be good to get a little bit more background from the man himself.
Great. I don't know too many things about too much health. I've been in healthcare for over 30 years and started my career with Big Pharma, worked for Merck and Company and Pharmacia in a variety of commercial roles across the globe. So as Laura was saying previously, in Australia, Europe, Japan, Asia Pac, bit of time in the US, the standard stuff you do when you're a pharma guy. And That's where I guess I got my grounding in the commercial areas of the way to run businesses. My last venture was that basically I started a company called Healthy Sleep Solutions, which went on to become Australia's largest provider of home-based diagnostic, treatment and management services for patients with sleep apnea. I came up with the idea and went across to San Diego and presented my concept to the ResMed board, who then subsequently became a cornerstone investor in the organisation, buying up 10% of that organisation. As I said, we became Australia's largest player in that space in a very, very short period of time, and became one of ResMed's largest customers in the world, not just in Australia, and the largest in the Southern Hemisphere. In 2013, I executed a trade sale to a French multinational called Air Liquide, who are a CAC-listed conglomerate, and spent the next 3 years basically making sure that I handed over the organisation in as good as health as I possibly could do. And subsequent to that, when I finished up, I didn't really know what I wanted to be. So I took on a couple of advisory roles, sat on a few boards, public and private, and basically got a phone call in October last year, and the rest is history. So that's a little bit more about me. But as I said, I am a career health guy, and basically know very little about anything else, to be honest.
That's probably a good thing. I'm sure investors are quite happy to hear that. You know, cross-continent journey, and you're a career health guy who's basically been in and out of all these different businesses successfully. Someone has asked on that note, is this finally the year that Respiri gets going with this later, and will the latest capital raise get us through to cash flow positive? You seem like the kind of guy who wants to get things done. Can you maybe answer that question for us, and will the latest cap raise be enough to get to cash flow positive?
There's no one more frustrated about the journey that we're taking than myself. I've been a shareholder in Respiri since 2010, so I've been sitting on the sidelines watching it for some time. I think that the capital raise and the SPP together will give us a very long platform, a runway to commercialisation. We've got a number of plans that we're executing. Some of the things I can and can't say too much about, but this should be the final raise to get us to a commercialisation phase here in Australia. So we're very comfortable of that. As I said, there are a few other things that we're working on to make sure that we shore up the base that we have, and also shore up the share value, or the value to the shareholders. So I'm very confident that the level of support we've received from existing shareholders and new shareholders, institutions and sophisticated investors, gives me confidence that they believe in what it is we're trying to do, and I treat their money like it was my own. So I'm very confident that the money we have now is more than sufficient for us to be able to launch successfully in Australia.
Can you give us an update on how the share purchase plan is going?
It's been it's been very, very well received. There's been some very strong support from obviously existing shareholders. So we are, surprised is not the right word, but we are very happy with how well it's been subscribed. So it's matched and bettered any of my expectations.
Someone was wondering how asthma patients currently monitor their condition, and I think this also speaks to where do you stand, or where do you fit into the broader market. There's some comparisons between Respiri and ResApp. ResApp clearly has a much bigger market cap at this moment, and you both have agreements with Phoenix Health. You've also just announced a new deal this week with Practice Innovators. Could you maybe, in your own words, just tell us where you sit in the market?
Sure.
Compared to the rest.
No, that's more than happy to. The one thing that we don't profess to be a diagnostic tool. So the big difference between Respiri and ResApp professes to be able to diagnose respiratory diseases using their app. That's not where we play. Once the diagnosis is done, whether that be through ResApp or through more conventional means, that's when Respiri kicks in. Because as I said previously, today, a patient does not have the tools to be able to monitor whether or not their asthma management plan is working or whether they're effectively controlling their asthma. Our wheezo and SAS Play allow the patient to be able to monitor how well their asthma is being managed through the wheeze rate. Also provide information on other potential exacerbating factors such as pollen or pollution or what have you. And this is very different to what ResApp does. So the way I usually say it is once the diagnosis is done, then we kick in and help the patient, the doctor, and the patient's carer team have a better understanding and greater insights into how well the patient's asthma is being controlled. So we don't profess to diagnose anything. We profess to being, if you will, a little Fitbit, the asthma Fitbit for asthma patients.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you for joining us today, Marjan. Great to hear from you as a new CEO of the company, and we'll follow the journey of the company over the next few months or so.
Wonderful. Thank you very much, Laura.
Thank you. Thanks for watching. Next up, we have Oncosil Medical, and Oncosil is a medical device company, of course, and they're seeking to advance radiation for cancer patients. Stay tuned. We'll be back in a few minutes' time with Oncosil.